All right, do we all remember Megamind? It came out in 2010, released by DreamWorks. It starred Will Ferrell, Blue Alien. He was the villain. Brad Pitt was the superhero, Metro Man, who Megamind was constantly going in a back and forth with, sort of like the Batman and the Joker, except at one point Megamind actually beat him, and then he didn't have a purpose in life anymore because he didn't have a hero to fight. Anymore. And funny enough, a movie that I hadn't seen in quite a few years, but I recently rewatched it. I actually thought this is pretty funny still. Like, this movie works pretty well. Animation isn't great in it, even for the time. I don't think the animation was all that great. This was during the time where like DreamWorks was making a ton of movies, which is weird because like it seemed like a few years ago they started to slow things down a little bit, but now they're back to releasing a ton of different movies and on tons of different platforms. Now they're using like Netflix, and they're releasing films like Megamind, the Doom Syndicate, versus the Doom Syndicate, straight to Peacock. Technically, it's a TV movie. But yeah, this is sort of the sequel to Megamind that no one saw coming. It's actually a movie that was made for the TV show, which is now on Peacock. I think it's called Megamind Rules. I don't know. It's really odd because Megamind came out in 2010. It's been 14 years, and now they're deciding to do a TV show. DreamWorks has done several TV shows. Their television department works on quite a few different animated television shows, and some of them are based on movies that they've released, but I don't think they've really done anything like this, where they go back to such an old property like Megamind and decide to continue it. And, Megamind originally didn't make a ton of money. In fact, this was one of the movies that Jeffrey Katzenberg cited as the reason that DreamWorks was going to kind of take a different approach with some of their future movies, because this, Monsters vs. Aliens and Shark Tale, he considered all of them to be like parodies of different film genres. Like, I guess Shark Tale was sort of a parody of gangster films. I guess Monsters vs. Aliens was making fun of like sci-fi films, and then Megamind, which was sort of spoofing up the superhero genre, they were going to stop doing those because they weren't doing so well overseas. So Megamind was not a big success for DreamWorks. They didn't do a sequel. And all these years later, they decided to continue the franchise with a direct-to-video, or direct-to-streaming, I guess. I mean, it is basically direct-to-video. It really is reminiscent of the days of when Disney used to do direct-to-video sequels, and then they would do their own TV shows, and sometimes the direct-to-video sequels would just be a tie-in to the television show. This is exactly like that. It's direct-to-streaming, and Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. Is it any good? Not really. The animation is, well, it's TV quality. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge because it's meant for television. This is a show meant for kids to watch, and this is just like the pilot episode, I suppose. But it's weird because, like, I guess I don't know who it's made for then. Like, it wasn't really made for fans of the original Megamind, because if we're gonna wait this long to do a sequel, most of the fans of the original have grown up, and yeah, they go back to Megamind. They still think it's funny, but I feel like the only way you're going to do a service to the original movie is by doing a like direct sequel to it with the original voice actors and with a similar, if not better, animation style. This one, this does not have as good of animation because it's on a TV budget. The actors are not the same. Will Ferrell is not back. Tina Fey not back. Brad Pitt's character is not even in the movie, and they have some new characters, like you have the Doom Syndicate. This is the main storyline. It's about a group of villains that were at the same prison as Megamind, and they broke out, and basically they see that Megamind has become a hero, but they believe he's pretending to be a hero in order to trick the city into a different villainous plot, which apparently they were all planning while they were in prison. So Megamind has to like pretend that he is faking the town out, like he's pretending to be a hero, and he's trying to trick his supervillain accomplices from back in the day. But it's kind of weird because we don't know who these characters are. They were not in the first movie. They weren't mentioned. Like, Megamind had a pretty basic plot. Like, what happens if the villain actually defeats the hero? I don't know. I mean, where do you run with that idea? And they found a way to make that idea work for an hour and a half. This movie doesn't know how to make this story work for an hour and a half. It doesn't work for an hour and a half. It works maybe as an individual episode, or you could have these villains as I guess I don't know, they could show up in a couple episodes of the TV show, and I'm sure they do show up based on the way this movie ends. But again, this plot doesn't work that well because I guess I don't get the severity of what's going on. Like, why is it so imperative that like Megamind that they don't find out that Megamind is actually a good guy? I don't know. It just doesn't seem to matter all that much. I guess he feels like he won't be able to take them down. And of course, it's not Will Ferrell as Megamind. The character isn't all that funny, and it's not really written the same way either because like some of the characteristics are not the same as in the original movie. Like, the original movie, he got a lot of words wrong. He would screw them up because, he's from a different planet. In the beginning of the movie, he's just like, hello. And it's like, well, no, he says olo. Because Megamind doesn't know how to say hello. And yet this Megamind, right at the beginning of the movie, says hello to the audience. And it's like, oh, right away, you're breaking one of the traits of Megamind. But then later in the movie, he's like very forcibly doing the Olo. And I'm like, okay, so I guess the writers remembered to put it back into the movie later. And some of his characteristics are there later in the movie. I don't know why they weren't there earlier. But regardless, he's not really the same character from the first movie. Like, another thing is that he's a lot more mean to his minion than he was in the first movie. And I guess that's because they need to drive the second plot of this movie, which is Minion, which has actually been renamed. They actually call him Chum in this movie. They bring it up. They just say that he can't call himself Minion anymore because of a legal reason. I guess within their world, there's a different product that's sold that's called Minion, whatever. The point is that I think it was meant to be a joke towards Despicable Me because, when those movies came out in 2010, Despicable Me and Megamind, both movies featured a character that was named Minion. So, like, they had already a few other similarities, but then that as well. And now Universal owns both Despicable Me and Megamind. So I guess, like, technically they wouldn't have to change the name, but I'm guessing they wanted to because Minion is associated with Despicable Me nowadays. You're not going to use Minion really anywhere else. So they call him Chum. Whatever. He breaks up with Megamind and decides to work at a diner, and he turns the diner into a successful donut shop. It's a cute enough story, but again, this would be more effective as like an episode of the TV show. It doesn't really work as part of this movie, and I feel like it's just a dumb reason for that character to go away. Like, there doesn't seem to be, like I said, it doesn't really match up with what happened in the first movie. And then, like, the third plot, I guess, is that you have this younger character who's like a social media hotshot, and she's gonna, I suppose, be a PR person for Megamind. And, she's written the same way that a lot of, like, young characters are written nowadays. I mean, think of someone like in Ghostbusters Afterlife, that character named Podcast. It's a character very similar to that. Like, that's what they're doing with this character. I'm guessing she's going to be in the TV show. They needed a younger character in the TV show that could relate to the kids who did not grow up with Megamind, but they recently found Megamind from 2010 on Peacock, and now they want to continue the storyline. And look, now there's a girl character, a kid my age in this show. Cool. So I guess that's the reason she's here. Really underdeveloped, doesn't really provide anything to the story, especially towards the end, the climax. She doesn't really do anything. And as far as being like a social media hotshot, we never really see the impact of that. We don't see anything of it. Maybe it'll play more into the TV show, but just in this movie, there's no reason for her to be there. It's really pointless. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this movie except that it was an odd one for DreamWorks to finally do. For one, it's not a worthy sequel. It's not really trying to be a sequel anyway. It's meant to be a pilot for a TV show that the TV show itself isn't really a worthy successor to the movie because it's been like way too many years. And if you were going to do another movie, I feel like you do have to bring back the original cast. I feel like you have to try to match the comedy of the first movie, whereas this one really doesn't. This one is just very generic. It's a very generic direct-to-video sequel, very reminiscent of the old days of Disney when they did a lot of direct-to-video sequels. So, yeah, I don't miss that era, and this movie didn't make me miss it more. Not a good time. Probably not going to remember much of this movie after having watched it, but, there's like maybe one or two or three, I don't know, pretty good jokes in there that I actually did laugh at. But for the most part, it's a weak version of the Megamind character. It's a weak story. it's just a bland setup to the upcoming television show, and the animation isn't as great. So I don't know. Can't really say much more about it beyond that. If you're a Megamind fan, keep away. But if you want to see what it's like for a studio to do a random direct-to-video sequel to a movie 14 years after the original, here's an example.